You may have never heard his name before, but Karl Brandt was one of the closest men to Adolf Hitler, his personal physician, his confidant, and one of the masterminds behind one of the most horrifying programs of the Nazi regime. He didn't give fiery speeches. He didn't command armies. But from quiet medical offices and clinical halls, Brandt signed death sentences with a pen, targeting the disabled, the mentally ill, and anyone deemed unworthy of life. As the chief architect of the T4 euthanasia program, he oversaw the systematic murder of over 200,000 people, long before the Holocaust had begun. He helped normalize the idea that medicine could serve the state, not humanity. He stood in the shadows of power, wearing a white coat instead of a uniform. Yet his crimes rivaled the darkest figures of the Nazi elite. Today, we look beyond the battlefield, into the operating rooms of death. This is the story of Karl Brandt, the doctor who used science to kill. Let's uncover who he really was. Hitler's favorite doctor. Karl Brandt was born in 1904 and pursued a career in medicine during the turbulent years following World War I. He quickly rose through the ranks as a confident and skilled surgeon, someone who believed deeply in the role of science in building a stronger Germany. His big break came in 1934, when he treated one of Hitler's aides after a car accident. Hitler was so impressed that he appointed Brandt as his personal physician. From that moment on, Brandt was a regular figure beside the Führer, present in meetings, traveling with him, and even assisting in private matters. Unlike other Nazi officials, Brandt didn't climb the ranks through the party or military. He used medicine as his ladder, and climbed it straight into the heart of Nazi power. While others shouted ideology, Brandt provided something more useful to Hitler: control over life and death under a medical disguise. By the late 1930s, Brandt had become more than just a doctor. He was appointed Reich Commissioner for Health and Sanitation, giving him broad authority over Germany's public health, and over who had the right to live. The T4 killings begin. In 1939, under Hitler's personal order, Brandt helped launch the T4 euthanasia program, a secret operation to kill those the regime deemed unworthy of life. The mentally ill, disabled, and chronically ill were targeted not on medical grounds, but ideological ones. Hospitals and institutions were ordered to report patients who met certain criteria. These individuals were then transported to killing centers disguised as care homes. Gas chambers, forged death certificates, and hidden cremations followed. Over 70,000 people were murdered in just 2 years. Brandt wasn't in the rooms where the gas was released, but he didn't need to be. He organized, approved, and defended the entire program. He believed, and later testified, that these actions were a form of medical mercy for the health of the nation. When public pressure forced the official closure of T4 in 1941, the killings didn't stop. They simply went underground, using the same doctors, methods, and logic that Brandt had put in place. Science without ethics. During the war, Karl Brandt's power extended into every corner of Nazi medical policy. He became involved in human experimentation programs conducted in concentration camps, experiments that involved freezing, high-altitude tests, and exposure to diseases, all without consent. Victims often died or were permanently disabled. Brandt worked closely with key figures like Heinrich Himmler and Leonardo Conti to align medical science with Nazi ideology. The goal wasn't healing, it was racial purity and military utility. Prisoners were test subjects. Their lives were seen as expendable tools for progress. While some doctors hesitated, Brandt pushed forward. He approved experiments, appointed staff, and defended the necessity of such cruelty. His medical background gave a false sense of legitimacy to crimes that had nothing to do with healing. Even as Germany began to lose the war, Brandt remained active. He advocated for total war policies, supported mass evacuations, and continued to push the line that these sacrifices were needed to save the Reich, even if that meant sacrificing innocent lives. Arrest, trial, and execution. When the Third Reich collapsed in 1945, Karl Brandt attempted to disappear among the chaos. But his face was too familiar, his name too notorious. Within months, he was arrested by Allied forces and identified as a key figure behind the Nazi regime's medical crimes. His capture sent a signal: those who had weaponized science would not be spared. Brandt's trial began in December 1946, as part of the Doctor's Trial, one of the 12 Nuremberg military tribunals held to prosecute Nazi war crimes. He stood as the lead defendant, accused of participating in inhumane medical experiments, authorizing mass sterilizations, and overseeing the euthanasia program that led to tens of thousands of civilian deaths. In court, Brandt remained calm, composed, and unrepentant. He claimed that he acted out of a sense of duty, not cruelty. He insisted that his medical decisions were justified by the needs of war and public health. He argued that euthanasia was humane, and experimentation was necessary for scientific advancement. To many observers, his words sounded more like rationalization than remorse. The prosecution, however, presented overwhelming evidence. Eyewitnesses described children and disabled patients being transported in sealed buses, never to return. Camp survivors testified about freezing tanks, sulfa drug trials, and surgeries without anesthesia. Official documents bore Brandt's signature, linking him directly to decisions that caused unspeakable suffering. Brandt's defense tried to shift blame, arguing that he was following Hitler's orders and was not personally involved in the physical executions. But the judges rejected this argument. The tribunal declared that a doctor's first duty is to humanity, not to a government or dictator. Brandt had not only betrayed that duty, he had redefined medicine into a tool for death. On August 20, 1947, Karl Brandt was found guilty of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and medical murder. He was sentenced to death. While awaiting execution, Brandt showed little emotion. His final statements repeated the same justification. He believed what he had done was right, even if the world now called it evil. On June 2, 1948, at the Landsberg prison, Karl Brandt was hanged. His final words were calm and clinical, like a man who still saw himself as a doctor. But history would remember him differently, not as a healer, but as the architect of organized medical murder. His legacy remains a chilling lesson. When science is stripped of ethics, it becomes a silent weapon in the hands of tyranny.